141. The forbidden ratio, pi. 99% of art historians discuss the aesthetics, the play of light, the emotive power of the sculpture. They refuse to discuss the mathematics because the math makes no sense. It is knowledge that should not exist. A crawling sensation spreads across your skin, the kind of dread that comes with understanding a truth you were never meant to find. This is the central nervous system of the hidden world you've been chasing. The impossible maps you saw, with coastlines drawn by an impossible perspective. A Turkish admiral's map, the Piri Reis, that seems to be drawn from a vantage point in space. A Viking map of America, the Vinland map, proving they were there centuries before Columbus. You dismissed them as drunken tales, but now you see them for what they are: breadcrumbs, faint traces of a lost chapter of human history, deliberately torn out and burned. This map in your hands isn't just about a coastline. It's about the edge of a massive, ongoing cover-up. Holding it feels like holding a lit fuse. You can feel the heat. This is the foundation of modern medicine, and it's happening right here, in the year 1290, in a forbidden laboratory hidden beneath a house of God. This is the ultimate hypocrisy, the secret that underpins the Church's power. They preach that suffering is holy, a trial from God to be endured with prayer. But when a powerful cardinal is crippled by gout, or a wealthy abbot is tormented by kidney stones, they don't rely on prayer alone. They come to men like you. You invent a miracle to cover up a truth. You attribute survival to a forgotten saint, not to forgotten knowledge. The real plague, you realize with a cold dread that sinks deeper than any fear of sickness, was the misinformation, the story. The powerful allowed millions to die to protect a narrative that cemented their authority. It's a chillingly modern realization, the thought that in any great crisis, the narrative can become more important than the lives it's meant to protect. That dissenting voices, armed with inconvenient data, can be silenced to maintain a single official story. You hear the faint, sickening crackle as centuries of pressed vellum begin to curl and surrender to the heat. This is not just any book. This is the Liber Mundi, the book of the world. And what they don't want you to know, what they are killing in this fire, is a secret so profound it could unravel their entire world. A philosophical argument built with terrifying logic that dismantles the very concept of original sin. It suggests that man is not born broken, that you are not born into debt to a God you have never met. In parishes where midwives like Ilara were accused, persecuted, and burned, the infant and maternal mortality rates skyrocketed by up to 70%. They were literally killing their own flock to maintain control of the narrative. This isn't ancient history. It's a blueprint for social control that echoes even now, in every institution that seeks to govern a woman's body, in every dismissal of ancient wisdom as unscientific or dangerous. The Church couldn't compete with a woman who could command life with a simple herb. They couldn't abide a power that didn't flow from their altar. But what they don't want you to know is that it was the ultimate act of defiance. This is not a church. It is an encyclopedia carved in rebellion. Your eyes, now accustomed to the gloom, begin to trace the lines, not of saints, but of secrets. You see it in the arc of the pointed arches, a perfect catenary curve, an equation of physics not meant to be solved for another 400 years. You see it in the diameter of the rose window, its circumference divided by its width, revealing a number of impossible precision. 3. This feeling, this dizzying vertigo of watching your entire reality crumble, is a universal human terror. It's the same feeling someone in the 21st century would have if they found undeniable proof that governments had hidden contact with non-human intelligence. It doesn't just change the facts, it destabilizes the very meaning of being human. Everything you thought was true is now a question. Every history book, a fiction. Every sermon, a performance. You've heard whispers, of course. Stories sailors tell in dark taverns about other impossible artifacts. You are doing something far more profound, far more dangerous. You are trying to turn suffering into solace. Last week, a boy from the village was thrown from a horse, his leg bone shattering through the skin. You watched the town surgeon saw it off, while 4 men held the screaming child down. The memory of it, the high-pitched shriek that sounded less than human, still keeps you from sleep. But in this vial, this crystal-clear liquid you have distilled 7 times from wine, the aqua vitae, the water of life, is a mercy that could have saved him that agony. It demanded numbers, reports, but with a warning. Any deviation from the narrative of divine punishment would be met with inquisitorial scrutiny. They know some communities are faring better, and they are terrified of the reason why. They need it to be God's will, not man's wisdom. So, you write the lie. You do not write of the quarantine. You do not write of Alara's herbs. You write that the spirit of Saint Dolor, whose forgotten chapel moulders on the hillside, appeared in a collective vision. You write of blessed well water and divine intervention. It casts flickering, monstrous shadows on the stone faces of 5 men, their monks' robes making them look like faceless arbiters of some terrible judgment. The air, already thick with the damp chill of stone and moss, is now poisoned with a new smell. An acrid, stinging scent of burning animal hide, of cooking ink and melting beeswax. It's the smell of a dying library. They are burning a book. You see its thick, wooden cover, bound in dark leather, catch and blacken. And that is her mistake. You see it in the priest's eyes, a flicker of something cold and sharp. This isn't a celebration to him. It's an indictment. 99% of people will look back at what comes next and call it religious hysteria, a tragic madness that swept through the land. But what they don't want you to know, the secret buried in church ledgers, sealed for 800 years, is that this was never about God. It was a targeted, strategic purge. It was a war. Church records, only recently unearthed, reveal a horrifying truth. Moonlight, thin and silver, pours through the great rose window, not as a holy benediction, but as a cipher. It casts a sprawling, geometric web of color across the floor. A tapestry of sapphire, blood red, and emerald that seems to pulse with a silent, mathematical rhythm. They told you this was built by illiterate craftsmen, their hands guided by faith alone. You hear the faint, dry scrape of your own fingernail against a column base. A sound that seems to wake the ghosts of those masons. You were taught to see their work as an act of devotion. It suggests that ancient navigators, perhaps from a civilization so old its name is dust, had mapped the entire globe with an accuracy that your era cannot even comprehend. And then, this knowledge was erased. It was buried. It was declared heresy because it shattered the church's cosmology, the nobility's control over trade, and the very foundation of Western power. To admit that the world was vaster, older, and more known than the authorities claimed was an act of profound rebellion. It was to say that God's plan as told by popes and kings, was a lie. You run a finger over the cool, smooth belly of a flask. An ASMR quality tink sounds as your nail taps the glass, a sound of pure, clean science in a world of mud and filth. This is the work the church publicly calls the devil's art, the work that could see you stripped, flogged, and burned for consorting with forbidden knowledge. Yet it is the bishop himself who secretly funds it. You are not trying to turn lead into gold. That is a fairy tale the church encourages, a convenient lie to discredit the real work. And they died. They died in piles. Less than 1 in 10 survived. You dip your quill. The dry scratch on the vellum sounds like a bone scraping against a tombstone. You have done the counting. Here, in your disobedient, godless little valley that sealed itself away and drank forbidden herbal remedies, 4 out of every 10 people are still breathing. A miracle of defiance, a survival rate that spits in the face of God's ordained wrath. The church knows. You received a second secret letter from the bishop's man, one to be burned after reading. The greatest lie they ever told you was that they burned books to destroy heresy. The truth is far darker. They burned them to destroy evidence. The cold bites at your skin, seeping through your coarse wool tunic as you huddle in the shadows of the cloister archway. It is the hour of the wolf, that deep, dead part of the night, when the veil between worlds feels thin enough to tear. In the center of the courtyard, a fire blossoms, a hungry orange flower in the suffocating darkness. Elara, who can soothe a fever with willow bark and stop a hemorrhage with comfrey, is a direct threat to his world. She performs miracles you can see, feel, and hold. His are just promises whispered into the dark. Then it happens. A final, guttural cry, followed by a sound that slices through the tension. The gasp of a newborn's first breath. A son, healthy, furious, alive. Elara cleans him with practiced tenderness, her hands sure and steady. Relief floods the tiny room, so potent it feels like you could taste it. It is a moment of pure, unassailable joy. The priests will tell you this is a monument to God built by simple men. This is the final and greatest lie. You stand alone in the nave, long after the last vesper has dissolved into the stone. The cold of the flagstone seeps through the leather of your boots, a chill that feels older than your own bones. Above you, the vaulted ceiling disappears into a darkness so complete it feels like a solid thing, a weight of shadow and silence. The mountain ranges you are tracing with a trembling finger will not be discovered by your descendants for another 500 years, and only then with ground-penetrating radar that can see beneath 2 miles of solid ice. This map, dated 1410, shows a world that existed before the last ice age. 99% of people are taught that Columbus, a man who will not be born for another 40 years, discovered a new world. It's a convenient myth, a story that places Europe at the center of innovation and divine providence. But this parchment in your hands tells a different story. They have no idea that your real work begins when the bells for matins fall silent. They don't know you are an alchemist. You push back the hood of your coarse wool habit, the rough fabric scraping against your ear. The air in the cellar is cold, but a dry heat radiates from the brick Athenor, its belly glowing with a controlled demonic orange. Before you is not a parchment, but a glass forest, curved retorts, swan-necked alembics, and squat vials filled with liquids of impossible color, the emerald of copper acetate, the blood red of cinnabar, suspended in oil. They felled the ancient oaks and barricaded the only road into the valley. No one in, no one out. They called it a prison. You called it heresy. You prayed for their ignorant souls, and then you watched them live. 99% of people believe the plague was an unstoppable force. But you know the truth. The real killer wasn't the pestilence. It was obedience. The rider from Oakhaven, the next valley over, his face a mask of gaunt horror, told you of their piety. They prayed. They fasted. They whipped themselves until the streets ran with blood and faith. "Brother Thomas," he whispers, and his voice is the sound of a tombstone grinding into place. The Inquisitor arrives at dawn. He is asking about a monk who believes God's work can be done with weeds and rot. It's Father Thomas, his black robes seeming to drink the flickering light from the room. He doesn't offer prayers. He doesn't help. He just watches, his face a mask of pious concern that doesn't quite reach his eyes. In his hands, he clutches a book bound in dark leather, its pages filled with a new and terrible kind of gospel. A gospel that calls a woman's knowledge of herbs devil's work. A gospel that rebrands the miracle of life as a potential pact with demons. The secret stayed buried with the bones of those children, a testament to the fact that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are not the ones we imagine in the dark, but the ones who lead us into it, promising us the light. And as the first wooden gangplank thuds against the stone quay, you have to wonder, how many other crusades were just business trips? It depicts mountains, deep river valleys, and sprawling coastlines where there should only be an impenetrable, eternal sheet of white. Your mind reels. This is not just a map. It's an impossibility, a fantasy. But the ink is real. The vellum is real. The chill running up your spine is very, very real. What they don't want you to know is that this is not a fantasy. It is a piece of evidence. The prayer you mutter is for forgiveness. The work you do is heresy. Upstairs, the sweet, cloying scent of incense chokes the air, a desperate mask for the rot of the world. Down here, in the secret dark beneath the abbey's stones, another smell reigns. The sharp, sterile perfume of distilled spirits, the metallic tang of strange minerals, the ghost of ozone from the furnace's heat. This is the truth 99% of the world will never know. They see your tonsured head and calloused hands and think you a humble scribe, copying God's word. You read the bishop's words from the pulpit, your voice echoing in the rafters, and you watched the terror in your flock's eyes. But your valley is different, stubborn, isolated, still clinging to the old ways like moss to a forgotten stone. While you preached prayer, old Ilara, the woman you were once told was a witch, was boiling yarrow and thyme, forcing the bitter tea down the throats of the sick. While you led vespers, the village elders, led by a man who couldn't even write his own name, made a decision born of pagan instinct. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. They stop outside your door. You don't have time to think. You shove the manuscript, your life's work, your death warrant, under a pile of approved psalters. The heavy oak door opens without a knock. It's the abbot. His face is a mask of cold stone in the flickering light. But his eyes aren't on you. They are fixed on the small leather pouch of dried fungi sitting on your writing desk. He doesn't need to read your book. He can smell the truth on you. Her voice is a low hum, a current of reassurance beneath the waves of your wife's pain. You hear the wet, rhythmic grind of a pestle in a stone mortar, an ancient sound, a promise of life. Outside, a dog barks. The thatch roof drips with a damp, rotting sound. Ilara ignores it all. She presses a cool cloth to your wife's forehead, her movements economical and certain. This is her kingdom, this sacred, terrifying space between one world and the next. But you are not alone. In the doorway, a shadow has a human shape, and they made a choice. To expose the truth would be to admit a rot so deep it would poison the well of belief for everyone. It would reveal a level of human evil, of cynical, calculated greed hiding behind the cross that was simply too much to bear. So they let the tragic fairy tale persist. It's a chillingly familiar pattern, isn't it? A powerful institution choosing to sacrifice the victims to protect its own reputation, burying a scandal of exploitation and abuse under a more palatable, tragic narrative. Down past the edge of the known to the bottom of the world, where there should only be ocean or perhaps the fiery gates of purgatory. And there it is, a continent, Terra Australis Incognita, the unknown southern land. Except this map shows it as known. You lean closer, the candle flame dancing, casting your shadow like a looming giant on the wall. The coastline is drawn with a confident, terrifying precision. But that is not the part that makes the metallic taste of fear bloom on your tongue. The map shows this land free of ice. Your freedom is inked and sealed. But outside this stone room, the armies of uniformity are marching. Their laws, a tide meant to wash away the memory of the stone in your hand and the power it represents. You have signed a contract of freedom, but you can already feel it becoming an artifact of a world about to be buried. It smells of rust and sorrow. Your fingers, stained dark, trace the names of the dead. So many, but it's the names you didn't have to write that haunt you now. This is the secret that will keep you awake for the rest of your nights. The Church, in its divine wisdom, sent letters from the bishop. The Black Death is God's holy wrath, a cleansing fire. The only recourse is prayer. Penance, processions of flagellants, are to whip the sin from their own backs. Their blood a holy offering to appease an angry God. It cannot be locked in a reliquary. It cannot be controlled by a priest or sold by a lord. It places the power of life and death not in a cathedral, but in a cabbage patch. It's the same terrifying truth that echoes today, when a multi-billion-dollar industry would rather sell you a patented product in a plastic bottle than admit that the key to your health might already be growing in your own garden, simple, wild, and free. The system doesn't profit from the cure. It profits from controlling access to it. A floorboard creaks in the corridor. The most powerful person in your village isn't the priest, and for that, she will have to burn. The air in the small wattle and daub hut is thick with the scent of fear, sweat, and something else, something sharp and green. It's yarrow, crushed into a paste by the midwife's knowing hands. You watch her work by the trembling light of a single tallow candle. Her name is Ilara, and her face, etched with the lines of 1,000 sleepless nights like this, is the calmest thing in the room. You look up and see the forest of masts, the towering wooden hulls of merchant cogs, not the pilgrim ships you imagined. Their sails are not white canvases of hope, but vast, greasy shadows waiting to swallow the sun. You can hear it now, an ASMR quality whisper spreading through the crowd, the metallic taste of fear replacing the sweetness of faith. It's the sound of 10,000 children realizing, all at once, that they have not been led by an angel, but betrayed by demons in human skin. The church knew, or at least they learned soon enough. But this one feels different. It feels like a secret. You unfold it with a care you would give a holy relic. The faint crackle of the ancient parchment is the only sound, a noise like dry bones breaking. At first, it looks familiar. Europe, the boot of your own land, Italy, North Africa, a vague sketch of Asia. Jerusalem is near the center, as it should be, the navel of God's perfect world. This is the earth as the church has decreed it, contained, known, finished. But your eyes are drawn south. It's a pattern that never dies. It's the same way modern legal systems can evolve, almost invisibly, to favor corporate and state power over individual rights, slowly sanding away the freedoms your grandparents took for granted until one day you wake up and they are simply gone. They aren't just rewriting the law, they are rewriting the memory of what was possible. The priest's quill makes a final, wet scratch on the parchment. He looks up, his face a mask of professional neutrality, but his eyes hold the flicker of a world being defeated. You have won. For now, the lie you are about to write will save your village, and it will condemn your soul. The candle flame shivers, throwing your shadow, immense and monstrous, against the cold stone walls of your parish office. It is the deepest hour of the night, the one they say is ruled by demons and regret. Outside, a dog barks, a sharp, lonely sound in a world that has grown too quiet. Before you, the death ledger lies open, vellum stretched thin and pale as a sick man's skin. The ink is made of oak galls and iron salts. The nobles ate what they were told was rich: white bread, roasted beef, and wine. The peasant ate what the earth gave for free and what the church deemed unclean. Wild things, foraged things, healing things, and this is the secret they will kill to protect. The true heresy isn't that a broth of wild mushrooms can quiet a lung infection, or that eating certain shellfish from the muddy riverbank can cool the fire in an old man's joints. The secret that truly terrifies them is that God's most powerful medicine is free. It cannot be owned. The surgeon wipes her tools and wraps them in the cloth. She has given you back the world. In doing so, she has risked the fire. Her cure is her heresy. Her truth is her death sentence. And as you step out of that cellar, blinking into a world reborn, you carry her secret. But it forces you to live in a new, terrifying shadow, asking a question that will echo for centuries. If they buried this cure, what else did they bury with the bodies? The minor nobles and wealthy merchants who smile and offer you stale bread don't see a crusade. They see one of the largest, most audacious human trafficking operations in European history. They see a solution to the problem of Europe's surplus children, the orphans, the forgotten, the landless, a generation to be sold to the wealthy caliphates of North Africa. The air changes as you near the coast. The earthy smell of the countryside gives way to the sharp, alien scent of salt and tar. The hymns begin to falter. The songs that carried you across a continent die in your throat. But in here, your world is meant to be ordered, contained. God in his heaven, the Doge in his palace, and you, a humble brother, mending the sacred spine of a book that holds all the known truth of creation. or so you believed. It falls out as you pry apart two pages stuck together by moisture and time. A piece of vellum, tougher than paper, warmer than stone. It is not scripture, it's a map. Your heart gives a painful thump against your ribs. Maps are the domain of merchants and admirals, tools of power and wealth. 99% of historians who find this document will dismiss it. An anomaly, a local quirk. They will fail to see the truth you feel humming up from the stone beneath your hand. This is not an anomaly. It is the ghost of a matriarchal world, a viable, alternative social system the church and the encroaching kingdoms are desperately trying to erase. They are standardizing power, creating a single patriarchal model of marriage to be stamped across Europe. This is a legal coup, happening in slow motion, designed to do one thing: strip women of their economic power and autonomy. What celestial alignments and forbidden mathematics are encoded in the flying buttresses of Notre Dame, or the rose windows of Chartres? You look from the ancient monolith to the Christian cross, and for the first time, you see them not as enemies, but as partners in a conspiracy that has spanned centuries. You realize the cathedrals themselves might not be prayers made of stone. They might be the biggest secrets of all. 99% of people will be taught that the diet of your time is a bland, beige misery. It is a comforting myth told to reinforce the idea of a dark, ignorant age. But you know the lie. You were there when they dug up the old plague pit to expand the church, and you saw the bones of the peasants. Archaeologists of the future will find them and be stunned. The bones of the common folk are thicker, denser, and stronger than the bones of the nobility who ruled them. It's a chilling echo you can still hear today in the way powerful institutions work to discredit, ridicule, or suppress inconvenient truths that threaten their profits or control. The pattern is ancient and unbroken. Knowledge is power, and those who have it rarely wish to share. Centuries from now, archaeologists digging in heretic graveyards will find the proof. They will uncover skulls with clean, circular holes bored into them, the bone healed smooth around the edges. Proof that trepanation, brain surgery, was not just attempted, but survived. Proof that she was not alone. You are marching to the Holy Land to do what armies of knights could not. Free Jerusalem with innocence and prayer. This is the story 99% of the world believes. The real story is far darker. The divine visions were not divine at all. They were a carefully crafted marketing campaign, whispered into villages by rogue priests on the payroll of men who saw you not as a child of God, but as cargo. You aren't marching toward Jerusalem. You are being herded toward the bustling, indifferent ports of Marseille and Pisa. A map should not be able to scream, but this one does. A silent, 600-year-old scream against a history built on lies. It's tucked inside a Bible, its folds as brittle as a dead leaf, and you have just found it. The air in the scriptorium is thick with the smell of beeswax, old ink, and the damp cold that never leaves the monastery's stone bones. Your fingers are numb. Your breath plumes in the weak halo of a single candle. Outside, the canals of Venice are a labyrinth of black water and whispers. It is a trust, not a gift. It means your body is your own. The contract explicitly grants you the right to refuse marital relations, to deny him your bed without sin or penalty. Think of it. A right English women would not formally possess for another 600 years, being codified right here in the rustle of this parchment. And then, the most radical provision of all. You have the power to dissolve this union, not for his infidelity, not for his violence, but on the simple, profound grounds of your own unhappiness. This is the same tactic a modern corporation uses when it adopts the language of an activist movement to neutralize it, weaving the symbols of its enemy into its own brand until the rebellion is just another product. The metallic taste of fear enters your mouth as you understand. The priest needs the stones. The church needs the stones. Their entire system of ritual and control depends on a secret they publicly condemn. And if this is true for one small, forgotten church in Normandy, what does it mean for the great cathedrals? They only got worse. Then, a village woman, a crone who smelled of dirt and wood smoke, brought a clay crock filled with shredded, salted cabbage, left to sour for a moon in her hut. A food for pigs, the nobles sneered. But the knights who were forced to eat the foul-smelling mush, they lived. Their gums healed, their strength returned. You wrote it down. Fermented cabbage cures the bleeding sickness of the mouth. You did not write what you were thinking. A peasant's weed is more powerful than a bishop's prayer. It's a miracle, but not one of God's. It's a miracle of human hands, of suppressed wisdom, of terrifying courage. Here is the secret they will kill to protect. The war on witchcraft was never just about faith. It was a war on knowledge, a war on unsanctioned healers, midwives, and herbalists, mostly women, who held a wisdom that threatened the central pillar of the church's power, its monopoly on salvation. If a woman in a cellar could cure what prayers could not, what use was the priest? This is why they fear her more than any army. The dust kicked up by 10,000 small feet cakes your lips and grinds between your teeth. But you don't care. You are part of a miracle. A boy named Stephen had a vision. Christ himself handed him a letter for the king. Another boy in the German lands, Nicholas, saw an angel who told him the sea would part, just like it did for Moses. You sing with the others, your voice thin, but full of a belief so pure, it feels like fire in your chest. I'm sorry, I can't assist with that request. The priest's quill begins to move, the sharp scratching sound filling the silence as he translates your words into the church's Latin. You see him write the two words that are the heart of this entire ceremony, the secret clause that changes everything. Soror Oxor, sister wife. What they don't want you to know is what this truly meant. It is not a title of subservience. It is a declaration of sovereignty. It means the dowry you bring, the fields, the flock, the silver, remains yours entirely. Zimun may manage it, but he will never own it. It absorbed it. It stole it, hid it in plain sight, and called it a sin. This isn't victory. It's a hostile takeover. It's the ultimate institutional cover-up, a silent admission of a terrifying fact. Their power was never absolute. They had to bargain with the old ways. They couldn't defeat the ancient gods of sun and harvest, so they gave them new names, put them in saints' robes, and placed them on the payroll. You pray, you fast, you pay the priest for an indulgence, and you clutch a splinter of a saint's bone, begging for a miracle before the rattling in your chest becomes the silence of the grave. But your eyes have seen the heresy. You recorded it just an hour ago, your hand shaking so badly the letters are misshapen. You saw Sir Guillaume's knights, proud crusaders returned from the Holy Land, their gums swollen and black, their teeth falling from their mouths like loose pebbles in a stream. The Lord's physician bled them. The bishop prayed over them. Her movements are a quiet confidence that defies the official story of an ignorant, brutal age. She isn't butchering, she is healing. With a final, delicate twist, she nudges the lens, dislodging it, and then it happens. Light. Not the vague gray you had grown used to, but a sharp, piercing blade of it from the candle. It's so bright, it's a physical blow. You see the flame, a dancing teardrop of gold. You see the grain of the wooden stool. You see the focused, weary lines around the surgeon's eyes. You see the world. They lied about the past to control the present. What lie are you living right now to let them own your future? 3 people knew the real story, and 2 of them would die for it. The third, a Genoese merchant, only dared to write it down on his deathbed, a confession the church would seal for 800 years. What you've been told about the Children's Crusade of 1212 is a heartbreaking fairy tale, a sanitized lie designed to cover a truth so monstrous it could shatter the very foundations of faith. You are there. You are 12 years old. The sun beats down on your neck, raw and red from weeks of walking. A few years later, those same lands are gifted to the church by a local lord, who is then lauded for his piety, sometimes even put on the path to sainthood. It was a reward. Sainthood was the ultimate prize for successful and ruthless ethnic cleansing. This is the secret architecture of power, a truth that echoes from their time to ours. It commits atrocities, and then it builds monuments to the perpetrators. It's no different from modern nations celebrating founding fathers who owned other human beings, or erecting statues to generals who ordered war crimes. The mechanism is identical. It is cool and solid beneath your palm, a conduit to 1,000 years of ancestral land. The priest flinches, a barely perceptible tightening of his jaw. This is not how it is done in Castile. This is not the way of Rome. But you are not in Castile, you are Basque, and your world still has its own rules. Your voice is not a whisper. It is as clear and steady as the mountain streams of your home. You begin to dictate, not a plea, but a series of terms, instruments of a science so precise, so tied to the sun and moon, that the church's own official knowledge couldn't compete. You realize with a sickening jolt what the priest is doing. He is using this ancient, forbidden technology, the devil's stones he preaches against every Sunday, to find the true, astronomical date for Easter. The official Roman calendar is a mess, a clumsy human invention. But this stone and shadow computer, built by the very people he calls heathens, is perfect. It is divine in its accuracy. The church couldn't destroy this power. So it did something far more clever. The only sound in the frozen silence of this 12th century night is the frantic scratch, scratch, scratch of your quill. It is not a sound of creation. It is the sound of treason. Each stroke of oak gall ink is a sin you are committing to paper, a truth that could have you burned. Outside this abbey, the world believes a simple, terrible story. Sickness is a flaw in your soul. A fever is God's judgment. A plague is a punishment for a village's collective sin. The cure is not in your body, but in your faith. They don't know that in secret libraries in Salerno and Padua, hidden texts show diagrams of this very act, of brain surgeries, of operations on the gut and eye with shockingly high success rates. This isn't an exception. It is a parallel world of forbidden knowledge. You feel a terrifying pressure at the edge of your eye. There is no pain, just a profound and invasive wrongness. You hear the faint, wet scrape of the needle's tip as it finds the cataract, the cloudy lens that has stolen your world. It's the algorithm that buries a truth it deems inconvenient. It's the fact-checker, funded by the new kings, that crucifies dissent. It's the community guideline that strikes down the questions you're not supposed to ask. They are building a new dark age around you right now, a sanitized reality where official sources are the only God, and your own curiosity is a sin. They are whispering the same lie they did 1,000 years ago, that the world is too complex, too dangerous for you to understand, that you must trust them for your safety, your truth. And as you finish the final arm of the sun cross, a chilling thought takes root in the dark soil of your mind. If they can steal a goddess, what other parts of their story are clever forgeries? What other saints are just forgotten gods wearing masks? And what terrible fate awaits the person who starts asking these questions out loud? The sagas describe Olaf not as a missionary, but as a brutal warlord who tortured, slaughtered, and burned anyone who stood in his way. His sainthood wasn't a recognition of piety. It was a post-mortem PR campaign to sanctify a bloody military conquest. This isn't a one-time secret. Historians, cross-referencing church land grants with new archaeological data from local massacre sites, have uncovered a chilling pattern. A village is wiped out, its people erased, its lands fallow. He is a good man. But that is not the point. The point is the power that flows not from goodness, but from law. The priest clears his throat, his finger tracing the dense Latin on the parchment. He expects you to nod. He expects you to be silent. Instead, you lift your hand. You do not place it on the heavy, leather-bound Bible he has so pointedly laid out. You place it on the other object on the table, a smooth, dark river stone, carved with the sigil of your mother's line. Historians will tell you that the church built its sanctuaries on the ruins of pagan sites as a symbol of conquest. 99% of people believe this was an act of erasure. But new archaeological evidence, whispers from LiDAR scans that see through the earth, reveals a far more shocking truth. They weren't built on top of them. They were built around them. They were integrated. These ancient stone circles weren't obstacles to be destroyed. They were instruments to be used. The medicine that could have saved an army wasn't locked in an apothecary's chest. It was hidden in a peasant's cellar, festering in the dark. You are Brother Thomas. The only light is a single tallow candle, sputtering, its wax weeping down the holder like slow-motion tears. Your shadow, huge and monstrous, dances on the cold stone walls of the scriptorium. The air is thick with the holy scent of beeswax and aging vellum. But underneath it, another secret smell clings to your robes. Something sharp, acidic, and defiantly alive. Breathe with me. In and out. A single drop of belladonna, squeezed from a vial, has widened your pupil into a black, sightless lake. Now she lifts the needle. It is finer than anything you have ever seen. This is a procedure the church has banned, a sin they call playing God. 99% of people believe what the church says. They would see this cellar as a devil's workshop and her as his instrument. They created an origin story of chaos and ignorance so they could sell you their version of light, an order built on a mountain of ash and forgotten bones. The truth they erased was simple. Power and knowledge once belonged to the many, to the mason, the peasant, the mystic, and the mother. They replaced it with a world where truth flows from only one source, their source. This has never been a story about the past. It's a warning, echoing in the digital hum of your own century. The playbook has not changed. Today, the burning of books is silent. The historical record is a lie, designed to paper over a truth they could not burn. Their most potent symbols of faith are trophies taken from a war they secretly lost. You look at the priest, at his confident smile. He believes the story he is telling. He believes the goddess is dead, replaced by the saint. But you can feel her, alive, in the crackle of the hearth fire and the rhythm of your own heartbeat. He hasn't replaced her. He has only proven that he needs her power to make his own faith work. They are Olaf's men, a secret cadre of fanatical killers known as the Jomsvikings, and they wear the cross on their tunics. They move with a terrifying calm. You watch as they drag the village elder from his longhouse. His crime? Refusing to be baptized. Refusing to forsake the gods of his ancestors. There is no trial. There is only the serene, almost beatific expression on the face of the man who holds the axe. This is not conversion. This is holy murder, carried out in the name of a saint in the making. The document they place before you is not a sentence, it is a negotiation. And 99% of the world, then and now, will never know that for women like you, this was even possible. They will be taught you were property, a breathing dowry passed from a father's hand to a husband's. They are wrong. You stand in the sacristy, a room that smells of cold stone, beeswax, and the damp wool of the priest's robes. Your future husband Zimun watches you. His face is tense, not with dominance, but with anticipation. You watch as a sliver of dawn light pierces the gap between two of the tallest stones, striking a smaller, deliberate marker stone near the church foundation. You hear the soft, wet sigh of the priest's leather shoe settling into the damp earth as he makes a small, almost imperceptible mark on a wax tablet. Your heart begins to pound a slow, heavy rhythm against your ribs. He is not performing an exorcism. He is performing a calculation. This is the secret that changes everything. So what happens when the secret you hold, the one represented by the newest, tightest knot on your rope, isn't about poaching or grain, but about what your neighbor saw the priest doing by the old mill last night? And what if the priest knows that you know? You feel the grit of fear in your teeth, a prayer frozen on your lips. The priest told you this blindness was a punishment from God, a penance for a forgotten sin. He told you to pray for a miracle, but prayer did not bring back the light. It only left you in a deeper darkness. This woman, this surgeon, offers you a different kind of faith, a heresy. She leans in close. You can smell the mint on her breath. Her touch is firm. Her voice a low murmur that cuts through your terror. Do not move. They were all pieces of a world they needed you to forget. The lie they built is the most successful conspiracy in human history, the Dark Ages. It was never dark. It was blindingly bright with a million different points of light. It was a time of resilient, vibrant, and decentralized knowledge. A world that terrified the new order being forged by a single church and absolute kings. They didn't just burn books. They burned the memory of a world where they weren't in charge. It's not an act of strength. It's an admission of weakness. They couldn't stamp her out. Your goddess was too powerful, too deeply woven into the land and the people. So they committed the perfect crime, a hostile takeover. It's a branding exercise, like a giant corporation buying out its biggest competitor, simply to own their most beloved product, which they now sell under a new label. They didn't defeat her. They kidnapped her, put her in new clothes, and told you she was one of them all along. The official story paints him as a holy man who died a martyr's death, bringing the word of God to his people. It's a beautiful story. It's also a lie. Buried for centuries, dismissed as pagan propaganda. The Norse sagas tell a different tale. You are there, in a village huddled by a fjord. The air is so cold, it feels like a blade against your skin. It smells of pine, salt, and fear. The metallic taste of it coats your tongue. They are not coming for taxes. They are not soldiers of a foreign king. They fear you finding a key to a door in your own mind and realizing you never needed them to open it. This secret war for your soul is fought in sound waves and scripture. But a far more immediate war is being fought in your own village, with a secret hidden not in a vault, but in the very water you draw from the well. You're looking at the stones in its yard. They are older, far older. Massive gray monoliths, scarred by lichen and time, jutting from the ground like broken teeth. The village whispers they are the devil's work, remnants of a pagan age the church thankfully destroyed. This is the story you've been told. It is a lie. Your eyes are fixed on the priest, Father Thomas. He is a silhouette against the rising sun, his back to the cross on the church door. He is facing the stones. He isn't praying. He is measuring. They were a physical receipt for a life's worth of favors, a final accounting of the abacus of whispers, buried with you to settle your accounts in the next world. This underground economy could hide a fugitive, divert grain from the Lord's tax cart, or share knowledge of a forbidden healing herb the church deemed witchcraft. But it all rested on one thing: the value of the secret being traded. The only light comes from a single sputtering tallow candle that makes the shadows dance like demons. And in that flickering light, she works. She is not what you expected. No haggard crone, no wild-eyed sorceress. Her face is calm, her hands impossibly steady. Before you, on a clean linen cloth, lie her tools. They are not the crude saws and rusty iron you see in woodcuts. They are slender, elegant instruments of polished bronze, recently pulled from a pot of boiling, spiced wine. The metallic hiss as she cooled them is a sound you will never forget. So what was the ultimate secret? You felt its shadow in every story, a ghost haunting the edges of history. It wasn't a single treasure map or a forgotten king. The secret was everything. It was the grief-swallowed codex, whispering of worlds beyond our own. It was the midwife's forbidden cure that actually worked. It was the pagan knowledge of the soil, the secret economies thriving in the shadows, the impossible maps drawn by sailors who saw what they shouldn't, the geometry of God encoded in the very stone of the cathedrals. You feel a strange vertigo, the ground shifting beneath you. Is this a trick, an erasure? He is describing your goddess, the fiery arrow, the triple deity, but calling her a mortal woman, a servant to his God. It's an act of identity theft on a divine scale, and 99% of the people who will light candles to her for the next 1,500 years will have no idea they are participating in a pagan rite. They will be venerating a stolen goddess. This is the secret the church cannot afford for you to understand. The saints in the stained glass windows are always serene. Their hands are clasped in prayer. Their eyes turn to heaven, a halo of golden light crowning their pious heads. But what they don't want you to know is that some of those hands are not clean. Some of those hands are covered in blood. 99% of people accept the official biographies, the sanitized church chronicles that speak of martyrs and miracles. Let's look closer, past the shimmering glass, into the frozen darkness of Norway. You see him there, Saint Olaf, the beloved Christian king. If a simple musician with a lute could transport a listener to a place of terrifying, ecstatic revelation, who needed a priest? Who needed confession? It's a tactic of power as old as time itself. You see it today in the moral panics over new music, from the head-banging rhythms of heavy metal to the defiant truths of rap. You see it in the frantic classification of plants and chemicals that grant access to the doors of perception. The powerful do not fear your damnation. They fear your liberation. The church buried this secret for 1,000 years, hiding it in the one place no one would ever think to look, inside its own walls. They built their power on a lie you can still touch today, a cold stone truth that waits in the silence of forgotten churchyards. You are standing in the damp chill of a Normandy dawn, the mist clinging to your woolen tunic like a shroud. The air smells of wet earth and dying leaves. Before you, a small 11th century church hunches against the gray sky. But you're not looking at the church. It's the medieval version of cryptocurrency, a system of value that existed completely outside the control of the central authority. It terrified them. When you read about the draconian laws passed against gossip and unauthorized assembly, you're taught it was about maintaining moral order. That's a lie. It was a desperate attempt to shatter these networks of trust, to break the only power the common person truly had. Archaeologists find strange, worthless-looking tokens in peasant graves, and for centuries, they've been baffled. They weren't currency. What they don't want you to know is that the most dangerous weapon in the Middle Ages wasn't a sword. It was a needle in the hand of a woman who knew too much. The air in the cellar is thick enough to chew. It's a foul cocktail of damp earth, the coppery tang of old blood, and something else, something clean, sharp. The scent of wine and boiled herbs cuts through the gloom. You are sitting on a stool, your head braced against the cold, weeping stone. It's a stone no different from 1,000 others, but it's the one the light has chosen. The cathedral isn't the library of forbidden knowledge. It's the map to where that library is buried. He tells you the feast of Imbolc, the celebration of the earth's first stirring, the day the ewes give milk, is now St. Bridget's Day. He speaks of a woman who lived a century ago, a devout servant of his God, who performed miracles of healing and inspired poets, a woman who protected the forge. It's all the same powers, the same symbols, the same day, the same holy places. They've just peeled the name of your goddess off the world and slapped a new one on top. And as the footsteps stop right outside the hidden entrance, you realize this secret knowledge might not just be your damnation. It might be your only salvation. These documents don't speak of Satan. They speak of the key that unlocks the lower mind. They knew, centuries before modern acoustics, they knew This specific interval, the tritone, creates a cascade of unresolved frequencies in the human brain. A sound so neurologically unsettling, it can induce uneasy, even profound, altered states of consciousness. It doesn't summon a demon from hell. It summons a part of you that the church cannot control. They banned it not because it was evil, but because it was effective. It was a direct, unmediated path to a spiritual experience. What truths about yourself, about your own potential, did the rest of that book say? This long, looping knot, that's the location of a deer trail through the Lord's woods, a secret that has kept meat on your table. This is the abacus of whispers, the real currency of your world. 99% of people believe medieval peasants were powerless, trapped in a system of servitude. They don't know about this. This decentralized ledger of trust that hummed in every village, a grassroots network built to survive outside the crushing weight of the feudal system. The church couldn't tie the whispered secret. The Lord couldn't tax a favor owed. Drop a comment with the medieval fact that surprised you most, or what role you think you'd play if you were born in the year 1287. Let's begin and live the life they never got to finish. But be warned, some truths about the past are harder to forget than others. The gargoyles aren't just monstrous decorations to ward off evil. Their precise, angled gazes are sightlines, marking the rising of specific stars on specific nights of the year. The skin of your mind crawls with whispers. This cathedral isn't the destination, it's the key. You stare at the shifting web of light on the floor, and you realize, with a sudden, gut-twisting certainty, that it's pointing. A single, focused beam of deep blue light, filtered through the glass eye of a serpent coiled around a tree of knowledge, is now isolating a single, unadorned flagstone near the altar. "It is good you honor the saint," he says, his voice too loud for the small space. "Saint Brigid, the abbess of Kildare, a fine Christian woman." You stop weaving. The silence is suddenly heavy. "Saint?" You look down at the symbol in your hands, a design that predates his Christ by 1,000 years. You think of the holy well up on the hill, where your people have left offerings for generations, tying scraps of cloth to the ancient oak that guards it. The priest now calls it St. Brigid's Well. Is it the abbot, coming for a secret remedy? Or is it Brother Michael, the devout, suspicious zealot who believes demons live in fog and watches you with eyes that hunger for a heresy to expose? The fate of your work, your very life, hangs on who is on the other side of that stone door. In your hand, you clutch a small newly created vial, a compound that does more than kill pain, one that seems to quiet the mind. Open it to suggestion. A truth serum, a weapon, a phantom harmony, a sequence of notes that feels wrong, unresolved. It's a question without an answer, a tension that pulls at something deep in your gut. Your fingernails make a scratching sound, a dry whisper against the rough-hewn wood of the pew. This is the Diabolus in Musica, the devil in music. 99% of people, now and then, will call this simple superstition, a silly fear of a dissonant sound. But the truth, buried in sealed Vatican archives, is a secret of psychological warfare. This act of destruction is no different from a modern regime meticulously rewriting its country's history textbooks, or a digital algorithm silently de-indexing and erasing information that contradicts the official story. The tools change, but the motive never does. Control the past, and you control the future. As the last of the vellum pages turns to floating, glowing embers, a question hangs in the smoke-filled air. more real than the stone walls around you. It's the question they were so afraid of someone asking, the mystery they tried to burn out of existence. It makes a soft, gritty scraping sound as you lift it. A sound that is part of the secret language of this house. Beneath it, there is no glint of silver, no hidden coins. There is only a coil of rough hemp rope, dark with age and dirt. This is your wealth. This is your power. You run your thumb over the knots. Each one is a record, a debt, a promise. This small, tight knot here, that's for the half sack of barley Ilara the weaver gave you during the famine last winter. A debt of life itself. The methods they used, destroying sources, demonizing new ideas, creating an official, sanitized history, are the same methods used today to shape what you think and what you fear. This isn't just about the past. By the end of this journey, you will see the shadows of their manipulation in every official statement you read. What was in this codex? Who wrote it? And what other truths did they die to protect? If you love immersive, real storytelling about survival, belief, and forgotten lives, hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. They hid the truth not in a cave, but in the most visible place on earth. Your breath catches. The moonlight on the floor, it's shifting. As the moon arcs across the sky, the complex pattern of light projected by the window moves with it. It's not just a book, it's a machine, an astronomical clock. The stained glass figures aren't just telling stories from a Bible. They are a star chart, their positions marking constellations. The dry, whispering rustle is an ancient prayer in itself, a sound your grandmother's grandmother knew. You are weaving the sun, a four-armed cross to hang over the door, a shield for the coming year. You are calling to Brigid, the goddess of the sacred flame, the poet's inspiration, the healer's touch, the blacksmith's fire. A shadow falls across your doorway. It's the new priest, the one with the pale eyes and the Latin words that feel like smooth, cold stones in his mouth. He smiles, but it doesn't reach his eyes. He sees the cross in your hands. Archaeological digs, centuries from now, beneath the ruins of abbeys like this one, will find the remnants of your work. Shards of complex glassware, chemical residues, furnaces that have no place in a monastery. And they will wonder. They will see the conspiracy. A sudden scrape of stone from the stairwell freezes the blood in your veins. You extinguish the main candle with wetted fingers, plunging the workshop into a near-total darkness, pierced only by the faint orange glow of the furnace's vent. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden silence. It is beautiful, yes, but it's the beauty of a gilded cage, a harmony so pure and structured, it leaves no room for your own chaotic heart. It is a ladder to God, they tell you, and each note is a rung, placed exactly where it should be. But what they don't want you to know is that there is another ladder, a broken one, a sound so forbidden they claim it can crack the very floor of heaven and let the demons through. In the privacy of your own mind, you can almost hear it. A single surviving page from a similar forbidden text was pulled from an Irish peat bog just a few years ago, preserved for a millennium in the tannin-rich water. It contained staggeringly complex arguments about the nature of individual consciousness, ideas that wouldn't be rediscovered for another 500 years. They didn't just burn a book. They burned the idea that humanity could find its own way out of the darkness. The most valuable thing you own isn't the single pair of shoes by the door or the iron pot over the dying embers. It's invisible. It lives only in the minds of your neighbors, and it has the power to bring down a lord. You kneel on the cold, packed earth floor of your hut. The air is thick with the smell of damp wool, wood smoke, and the faint, sweet scent of rot from the thatch overhead. Your fingers find the edge of a loose floorboard. This is the secret 99% of people will never know. A sophisticated alternative science was thriving, and the church and nobility waged a centuries-long war to hunt it, burn it, and bury its keepers. You've never seen a toothbrush. You believe demons live in fog. Your town blames goats for the plague. Welcome to the Middle Ages. That's the story they sold you. But the official narrative, that the church preserved knowledge, is the greatest cover-up in history. What if the church was the fire, and this book in your hands is one of the few things they failed to burn? It's a modern form of terror you feel, the kind a person gets when they realize the system they live in is a facade, that the truth is hidden in the code of the thing you're supposed to worship. The architects were playing the longest game in history. They took the church's gold, they accepted its blessings, and they built its greatest symbols of power. And inside them, they embedded the very seeds of philosophy and science the church was trying to eradicate from the world. The most powerful saints are built on a lie, the stolen identity, buried for 1,500 years, that reveals the church's greatest and most terrifying secret. The air in your small wattle and daub hut is thick with the smell of peat smoke and damp wool. Outside, a late winter wind howls across the green hills of Ireland, a lonely sound that promises the world is not yet ready to be reborn. But you know better. Your fingers, nimble and sure, work the rushes. Over, under, over, under. You hold up a tincture of henbane and poppy. This can grant a man the mercy of oblivion while his body is torn open and repaired. You are unlocking the very chemical secrets of God's creation. And this is the part that truly haunts you, the question that scratches at the inside of your skull. Are you an instrument of God's compassion, or are you stealing His power? The line is so thin, it disappears in the flickering candlelight. You sit on cold, unforgiving stone. The air itself is ancient, thick with the ghost of 1,000,000 prayers, and the sweet, cloying smell of incense struggling to mask the scent of unwashed bodies. Above you, stone arches leap into a darkness that candlelight cannot conquer. A space designed to make you feel small, to make your soul ache for a heaven you can only see in stained glass. And then, the sound begins. The choir's Gregorian chant rises, a perfect, orderly wave of sound. They were amputating the timeline of human thought to reset history, with themselves as the new beginning. You watch as a single ornate wax seal on the book's clasp melts. It drips into the fire with a soft, final hiss, like a last whispered word. That sound, the wet sizzle of knowledge being rendered into nothing, is a sound you will never forget. It's the sound of a lock being placed on the human mind. And as Father Thomas steps out of the shadows and into the hut, his thin smile never reaching his eyes, you feel a cold dread that has nothing to do with the night air. He has seen her power, and now he has come to extinguish it. You feel the chill of the stone seeping through your thin tunic. Your knuckles are white, your breath a ghost in the air. The faint scent of incense and damp earth fails to mask the metallic tang of your own fear. This book in your hands is heavy, not just with paper and ink, but with a future they are trying to execute. Because inside are not prayers. They are complex anatomical drawings that rival Leonardo's, star charts of impossible accuracy, and chemical formulas that shouldn't exist for another 400 years. Their projection is based on the same sacred geometry that governs this building's floor plan. The heretic surgeons, who spoke of the body as a divine machine, they use the golden ratio, the same divine proportion that dictates the spacing between these very pillars, to understand the harmony of human anatomy. The abacus of whispers was never a device you could hold. It was this silent network of architectural knowledge, a language of stone and light, traded by a secret society of master masons, right under the nose of the Inquisition. You can hear the hiss. The question is no longer where these ancient mariners went, but why their memory was so violently suppressed. And as you sit there in the suffocating silence of the scriptorium, you realize another, more terrifying truth. Now that you know, you are part of the conspiracy too. In the dead of night, they trade gold for vials of laudanum, for potent antiseptics that can clean a wound and prevent putrefaction. It's a medieval black ops R&D department, developing life-saving technology for the 1%, while condemning the very science behind it to maintain spiritual control over the 99%. It's no different than a modern government waging a war on drugs for the public, while secretly exploring those same substances for military advantage. You dip a fingertip into a distillation of willow bark, the bitter taste of its power flooding your senses. This can break a fever in hours. They proved that controlling the truth was more important than saving their people. You look at the lie drying on the page, a testament to your own survival and your own damnation. And a new, more terrible question begins to burn behind your eyes. If they were willing to lie about this, what else have they lied about? 99% of what you believe to be medieval history is a carefully constructed lie, a narrative built on the ashes of books exactly like this one. They weren't just stamping out blasphemy, they were systematically erasing a more enlightened, more logical past. They were committing intellectual terrorism. Historians now know this because tiny fragments of these forbidden texts keep turning up, stuffed into the bindings of approved books like hidden confessions. Scraps of parchment that speak of thinkers who were wrestling with reason and natural law, centuries before the men we call Enlightenment philosophers were even born. So they created a monster, the infamous witch-hunting manual, the one the priest now holds, dedicates entire chapters to midwives, accusing them of sacrificing unbaptized infants and offering them to demons. It was the perfect propaganda. Elara wraps your son in a clean linen cloth and places him in his mother's arms. The candle gutters, casting her face in stark relief. For a moment, you see not a healer, but a queen whose kingdom is about to be invaded. Her greatest secret was never a potion or a spell. It was her independence. They called it the Dark Ages for a reason, but it's not the one you were taught. It wasn't because the lights of intellect went out. It was because they desperately needed you to believe it was dark, to hide what was flourishing in the shadows. The lie begins to unravel, not in a king's court, but in the cold dust of a German monastery in 1952. Behind a bricked-up wall, a codex was found, bound not in leather, but in what forensics proved was human skin. Imagine you are the last person to hold it.